Welcome to the Maryland Retail Products Producer Program. This program is for producers and craft food entrepreneurs seeking to expand their retail product sales beyond the farm gate. This presentation is one component of the online training materials available on the University of Maryland Extension's Ag Marketing website. Additional training, educational materials, articles, and real-time educational opportunities can be found there. My name is Ginger Myers, and I'm the marketing specialist for Ag and Food Systems with the University of Maryland Extension. In this presentation, we'll discuss various food processing and safety regulations for producing food products. We will also highlight some of the insurance coverages recommended for food venture entrepreneurs. Regulations for food processing are often specific to the type of food, non-hazardous, acidified, or perhaps shelf-stable. Different agencies regulate different types of food. Also, different food processing facilities may be restricted to producing only certain types of food. For instance, a kitchen that's certified for acidified foods may not be used to process USDA meats. Another is the example of perishable versus non-perishable foods. Processing regulations often differ for hazardous and non-hazardous foods. Cottage foods in Maryland are foods that are produced under certain regulations and may be sold only in the state of Maryland, directly to consumers from a residence, at farmers market, at public events, by personal delivery, or by mail delivery. No interstate sales are allowed. These foods are commonly not for distribution in most stores, but we are seeing that there are some outlets, particularly in local stores, that these can comply with. However, regulations change on a regular basis, so it's best to make sure that you have the most current COMAR regulations for this in the state of Maryland. You can read more about Maryland's cottage food laws at the Department of Health's webpage listed here. Government food safety regulations are required of all processing operations, and their products must meet specific standards. Again, this is often driven by what you're making and how you're doing it. There are levels for state, federal, and local regulations. Often a facility or operator must be licensed by a basis of the food license food business. To get the license, the applicant must show they meet established safety regulations. Again, these may be different at different regulatory levels, such as federal, state, and local. For more information about your product, please visit the Food Processing License page at the Maryland Department of Health. At the federal level, the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and the United States Department of Agriculture have jurisdiction, which means they have the authority to make and enforce regulations within any state or territory. However, sometimes it's confusing of who has authority over what, and sometimes it's overlapping. For example, the FSIS, or the Food Safety Inspection Service, regulates livestock and dairy farms, but FDA regulates milk pasteurization. FSIS regulates animal slaughter facilities and grades meat, but FDA regulates products that contain meat, such as an ingredient such as sausage, pizza, or frozen dinners. FSA regulates eggs, but FDA regulates eggs products. So it's always helpful to look at your product, the form that it's in, and then trace back to the agency that has jurisdiction for that. At the state level, each state has a Department of Agriculture and Public Health, who usually both handle the federal law and adopt and enforce food safety at least equal to the federal standards. State standards may be more restrictive than federal standards, but not less restrictive. Let me repeat, state standards may be more restrictive than federal standards, but may not be less restrictive. In Maryland, we have the term home rule in Baltimore City, Prince George's, and Charles counties. These designated areas may act independently, and their regulations may be more restrictive than state regulations. When I say they act independently, it does not mean they're less restrictive. Again, they have the ability to be more restrictive than state regulations in other counties of the state. As a result, at the local level, the food safety system has been a bit of variation in authority, process, interpretation, and enforcement. So you'll need to check on the regulations in your county as they apply to your process and your food. Again, remember they may be more restrictive than the state, but could not be less. Here's a graphic of the regulatory environment for Maryland farmers, tracing who regulates what. Find where your product would fit on here. If it's a meat, is it under USDA? Is it fruits and vegetables that perhaps come under food safety modernization, under state regulations? Some of the programs, such as the egg program in Maryland, that is specific to having your flock registered here, where it may not show up under some of the federal agencies. Again, determine what your product is and then work backwards to who regulates it at local, state, or federal. The best place to start is your own county health department. There are rules for specific foods, and a good resource is available at the Maryland Rural Economic Development website listed here with a specific list of rules for specific foods. Sometimes it can be confusing whether you're allowed to produce certain types of cottage foods. There's a list there. A certain type of non-acidic foods, what's required for acidified foods, and then some common products such as honey that do not require further processing. This is a good list to look at. It starts at the state level and also has federal links. Regardless of what food you produce for retail sales, these requirements for licensing are something most retail buyers will want you to know and have addressed in advance of coming to make a sales calls with them. They're assuming that your product has met the food safety regulations applicable to it. Space limits complete explanations of all the documentations you may need, such as a HASA plan and so forth. Where possible, links are going to be provided in the information as we move forward here. HACCP, H-A-C-C-I-P, stands for the Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points Plan for Food Safety. Again, you need to determine whether this is a plan that you need written for your process. If you are converting raw product into perhaps a canned product or a package or processed, you may be required to have a HASA plan registered with the state. So facility operators must develop a plan for managing critical control points and document the implementation of their plan. Plan outlines and help with preparing a plan is also available at the Maryland Department of Health's website. A food recall plan. The objective of a food recall plan is to remove product in a marketplace at a time when there's been a recall to prevent further consumption. A recall is defined by the Food and Drug Administration as a firm's removal or correction for a marketed product considered in violation of the laws that administer that product. Oftentimes, recalls are due to one of the hazards identified in your HASA plan, whether that's perhaps an allergen that got into the packaging or a foreign material. The Maryland Department of Health also has the elements of a food recall plan listed on their site that you can download and use as a template for developing your own recall plan. Good manufacturing practices are basically the operational and environmental conditions required to produce safe food. There's 5 key elements that covered by good manufacturing processes. This applies to the people doing the processing, the premise, The process itself, what's included, what are the steps, your SOPs, what are the product, and then procedures or paperwork. How do you document what has happened? As far as a HASA plan or having batch numbers, labeling, and so forth. Again, the Maryland Department of Health, this office can give you a list of these good manufacturing practices and procedures. Part of the good manufacturing, of course, is the control of pests. Pests are inherently drawn towards foods, hence the food industry is one of the most vulnerable segments and cannot do without pest control. So part of your SOPs from the state will also look at how are you keeping pests out, how are you controlling that, and how do you document that. Food ventures also have insurance issues, and some of those that apply directly to those specific food ventures are general farm liability or commercial business liability. Product liability is applicable for anything you're going to make as a food and sell off the farm. It is different than your general farm liability that protects you if someone comes onto your farm or into your store and is injured in some way. Perhaps a commercial business liability also will cover some of that. But for your retail-ready product, you need product liability insurance. Additional types of insurance include recall insurance, accidental contamination, and malice tampering insurance. These are insurances that, depending on the scale, size, and outreach of your product, you may want to consider. But you may definitely want to consider your general liability insurance for your business or farm and product liability insurance. There are several agencies and offices that can give you direction and referrals to the type of insurance and the insurance carriers in the state of Maryland that can help you with these resources. Thank you for visiting and viewing this presentation. Be sure to check back at this website for more training materials and resources for successfully creating and marketing your products.